So yesterday, we finally got our initial college football rankings, the rankings many of us have been waiting for quite some time, and a lot has been made about them. So today, I wanted to sit down and give my opinion on the situation. And I've looked at this a few different ways, whether it be making my own point total to try and see how different scenarios play out, to whether I've looked at the BCS standings and how they would have had it, to looking at the minute details, such as going back to the top 8 teams and looking at every game they've played and looking at the strength of their opponent, averaging them together to get a clear indication as to which teams have played quality opponents, and we're going to break it all down. Before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you agree with the initial college football playoff rankings? Let me know why or why not. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions, though small, are really massive in getting content creators such as myself both picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. And before we hop into this, I would like to apologize in advance if there are more cuts than usual in this video. I'm dealing with bronchitis, trying not to let it get to pneumonia, but because of that, I can't go extended periods of time without having coughing fits, and I figured it'd be much easier to flow with the video if there were cuts as opposed to me coughing up a lung. So with all that being said, let's hop into this, and let's first and foremost start with our new top 10 based off the college football playoff rankings. At number 1, we have Georgia, 2, Alabama, at 3, Michigan State, 4, Oregon, 5, Ohio State, 6, Cincinnati, 7, Michigan, 8, OU, 9, Wake Forest, and 10, Notre Dame. And right off the bat, there are some intriguing things. But I really wanted to start and look at this as the list currently sits, because I don't think anybody would have an argument with Georgia being at number 1. Georgia has probably been the most consistent team within college football all year round. Alabama at number 2 raised eyebrows. Now, even though I absolutely unquestionably believe that Alabama is a top 4 team in the nation, I even looked at some different metrics that we could use to prove that. We will talk about that later. Alabama being number 2 was interesting in the context of a Michigan State, who also is 8-0, but has some ranked wins. It's interesting in the concept of an OU who is 9-0, but has struggled at points this year. So we're going to break all of this down. Michigan State coming in at number 3 makes absolute sense. Oregon at number 4 was very surprising. Oregon has a marquee win against Ohio State at the Horseshoe, which is a phenomenal win. Nobody can take that away from you. But of the top 10, Oregon easily has the worst loss to Stanford, right? Like, we can talk about Alabama's loss to Texas A&M, but what we can all agree on at the end of the day is Texas A&M is still one of the most talented teams in the country. They're still one of the better coached teams in the country. And a loss to Texas A&M is not the same as a loss to Stanford. So Oregon easily has, in my estimation, the worst loss on this list, and so I was very surprised to see them come in at number 4. And number 5 is Ohio State, having that loss to Oregon, but Ohio State has really found themselves here recently. The question is, though, is the quality of opponents they've played enough to vindicate this position? Now, the interesting thing before I go any further is it pertains to the Big Ten. The Big Ten will sort itself out. When we look at it, Ohio State still has to play Michigan, they still have to play Michigan State, and then there's the Big Ten championship game. So at the end of the day, the Big Ten will sort itself out, and we will get a clear indication as who deserves to go to the playoffs from that. So I'm not really worried about how the Big Ten will end out. At number 7, we have Michigan, once again talking about the Big Ten. At number 8, we have Oklahoma. A little surprising that Oklahoma fell to number 8, but we're going to talk about this as well. At 9 and 10, we have Wake Forest and then Notre Dame. And to be 100% fair, in the next few examples I'm going to give, I didn't even look at Wake Forest or Notre Dame. Because when I'm looking at this, Wake Forest is 8-0, but they still have NC State ahead of them, which is going to be a tough game. And even then, the ACC has been so down this year. I don't ascribe to the notion that Wake Forest is a top 4 team in the country. I just simply don't. And as it pertains to Notre Dame lost to Cincinnati, and right now, the best win Cincinnati can claim is Notre Dame, and outside of that, the quality of their opponents has been rather lackluster. So if you are Notre Dame, it is going to be next to impossible for you to find a justification to be put into the college football playoffs when you have a loss to a team that outside of you has played lackluster competition. And that team is currently ranked above you. So for the simplicity's sake, I didn't even look look at Wake Forest and Notre Dame any further because I just don't see them having a real argument to being able to make the college football playoff. Now, with all of that being said, the first thing I did, which in no way am I saying this is how it should be done, I was just looking for justifications for any sort of lists. I assigned simple point totals. A win is worth 1 point. A win against ranked opponents is worth 1 point, and a loss is worth -2 points. And what I found is that Georgia is still the #1 team in the country. But after that, we have a tie between Michigan State, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma. Now, ultimately, to break this tie, I did put Michigan State and Cincinnati above Oklahoma for the simple fact that they both have ranked wins and Oklahoma doesn't. Even though Oklahoma is 9-0, the ranked wins that Michigan State and Cincinnati have do put them at 9 points as well. And I do have to give the nod to a team that has beat a quality opponent, something we're really going to get in on here soon. But outside of that, Alabama comes in at number 5, just outside this top 4. But like I said, if we are asking the question, who are the 4 best teams in the country, I don't particularly hesitate to put Alabama in that list. So this point total, like I said, the reason I wouldn't use it is even though it gives us a clear indication of how things have come to be, it lacks nuance. And nuance is very important, especially in college football. Because if we're looking at this asking, do wins matter? The answer is yes, but not all wins are created equal. Because if we are just simply to go by wins are all that matters, we are then assuming that everybody is on an equal playing field. And that simply is not the case. The quality of opponents each team plays differs vastly. But that's why I went back and looked at who the top 8 teams have played and found where those teams rank as it relates to total offense and total defense. After I found those numbers, I averaged all of them together to find out a general idea of the strength of schedule as it relates to total offense, total defense. And the findings here were really, really interesting. Because when I did this and I averaged out the teams and where they ranked in the average offense and defense, it was very intriguing. For instance, Georgia, the teams they've played this year, if you were to average where they rank offensively, it turns out to be 73, defensively 45. For Alabama, Alabama has played teams that average around 45th in the nation for offense, 56th in the nation for defense. For Michigan State, 59th in the nation for offense, 67th in the nation for defense. For Oregon, 65th in the nation for offense, 63rd in the nation for defense. For Ohio State, 77th in the nation in offense, 63rd in the nation on defense. For Cincinnati, 94th in the nation in offense, 71st in the nation on defense. For Michigan, 72nd in the nation on offense, 54th in the nation on defense. And finally, for the Oklahoma Sooners have played teams that average 61st in the nation on offense and 87th in the nation on defense. And if I was to take those numbers I just gave and, like I said, average them and then rank the teams in the top 8 based off of the quality of opponents they've played, we get a much different story. And mind you, I'm not putting any bias into this. This is straight numbers that I looked at. And when we look at the numbers and we look at the average that give us an indication of the strength of teams each institution has played, we get a very interesting conversation. And in fact, the list then goes Bama, Georgia, Michigan State, Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State, OU, and Cincinnati. Essentially saying that yes, OU and Cincinnati, they're undefeated, but the teams they've played have ranked towards the bottom of the top 8 in offense and defense. So am I saying OU is not a top 4 team? No. And I actually agree with a lot of OU fans that they're much lower than they should be on this list. However, I do want to bring the nuance to the argument and try and answer the why. Why is OU lower than they should be? Now, that's not to say that Oklahoma isn't rising right now. Oklahoma looks to be in a positive trajectory. Getting healthy will be huge. And luckily for the Sooners, the best football is still in front of you when you're looking at the teams you have to play. And so this will all end up. I have an impossible time believing that if OU wins out, they're left out of the college football playoff. So when you look at what it is that they still have to play, which is the best football, the way the committee will view it, is still in front of Oklahoma, you mix that with the Big Ten will take care of itself. So for Oklahoma, I do understand the disappointment coming in at number 8. I absolutely do believe you should be higher. And even me being an Alabama fan, I'm almost put between a rock and a hard place. Because I absolutely agree winning matters, and winning should be a very important factor. However, how you win and the nuance of these things matter. And because of that, I absolutely, without question, believe Alabama is a top 4 playoff team. In fact, when I broke down to you the quality of opponents each team has played and gave you the average of the ranks, Alabama had the best schedule of anybody within the top 8 thus far. And that's just the pure numbers of the situation. That's no bias inserted. But at the end of the day, you're between a rock and a hard place. Where do losses matter, and where does nuance come in, and how much do we weigh each of them? This is going to be so interesting as it moves forward. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. I'm going to get out of here before I start having an absolute coughing fit. And we will be talking about this on a live stream as soon as I can, but I'm very interested in hearing from y'all. That's it. See ya.